Hello, everybody, and welcome to the digitally uploaded podcast. I have stolen control of the podcast from Alan, so I am the host today. I'm sure you're all very happy about that. We've got a great podcast today. We've got a special guest and everything. Tina comes from, what's the name of your company again? I can never remember it.
Cotton Candy Cyanide.
Cotton Candy Cyanide, which is a great name. Yes, and Tina's got her new game out, which we're going to talk about in the podcast later down the track. But for now, hello, Tina, and welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining us.
It's delightfully early.
It is. So the time we record these things for listeners is 8 o'clock Australian time, and Tina's based in Japan, which is 1 hour before. So she's actually up at 7 o'clock in the morning, which is brutal, on a Saturday, no less, to chat with us. So we really appreciate you being on. That's it's a cruel time, but it's the only time that actually works. We'll do our best. We'll make sure we get lots of that traffic so people maybe buy 1 million copies of your game, and it'll be all because of us. We've also got on the podcast Trent. Trent is our regular. Hello, Trent.
Hello. I too am also up ridiculously early. It's 8 o'clock though, but still.
It is. It is, but you don't have a video game to sell, so you're even more crazy to actually be up at this time. We also have Harvard. Hello, Harvard.
Hello. I am so sleep deprived because it's Tokyo Game Show season. I'm sure, Matt, you could say the same.
Yes, I was up until 1 o'clock this morning. That's why I'm so bright and perky. I just I never really got to sleep. The streams were long and all day long. We're going to talk about TGS later on in the show. And finally, we have Matt from that mythical kingdom over in New Zealand. Hello, Matt.
Hello. Yes, I am also very early, where it's 10 o'clock in the morning here, and I am not used to being awake this early.
Cool. Okay, we're all here. That is a very good roll call. I think I did a good job with that, to be honest. And we're going to start with our usual Hatsune Miku music track. Now, we usually throw this over to the guest if they're here, if we have one, if they have a favorite Hatsune Miku track, but I just realized I didn't actually tell you about that beforehand. So you maybe don't, Tina. Do you like Hatsune Miku?
I do, and Dear Cocoa Girls is my jam.
Oh, that's a very beachy pool party song. I like that song. It's very good. Okay, so Dear Cocoa Girls it is.
Alan's got me mad.
Yeah. I found another Miku fan. I'm going to have to get you on the podcast all the time now. I need an ally. Okay.
「
Welcome back, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that wonderful bit of music. So, the games of October, as usual, we're going to start our podcast off by talking about the stuff that's coming up in the month ahead. And we have stuff. It is definitely going to be a month where there are games released. We're going to start with the PlayStation 4. And on October 1, so right from the start, we've got some big names coming. Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time, which I'm sure some people will look forward to. Some people are crazy and like Crash Bandicoot. And yeah, there you go. There's a new one coming. There's also Star Wars Squadrons coming out on October 2. So EA is coming out with one of its big guns. We've also got Ride 4, if you like the vroom vrooms. That's coming out on October 5. And Nickelodeon Kart Racers 2 is coming out on October 6, along with FIFA 21, if you like your footballs. So there's a lot of sports games coming out in October is the point. Scrolling on further, we've got The Survivalist coming out on October 9. That looks pretty good. You can go and check that one out if you haven't heard of that one before, but it does look like a charming game. On October 13, we have a visual novel double pack coming, Robotics Notes, which is what belongs to the same broad franchise as Steins Gate, and if you haven't heard of Robotics Notes before, you should probably check that out, because I think if you like your visual novels, you're going to enjoy that one. On October 13, we have another sports game, NHL 21, that'd be the ice hockey one. On October 14, Oni-Chanbara Origin. If you like your action games with lots of fan service, then you're definitely going to be looking forward to that one. That's the one where they all run around in bikinis, because it's actually Oni-Chanbara Bikini Warriors or something. So yeah, the bikini is the default in that, which is pretty good. On October 15, if you haven't played Raji, an Ancient Epic before, it came out on Nintendo Switch about 2 months ago. It is out on PlayStation 4. It is definitely worth checking out. It is basically a Prince of Persia-like by an Indian developer, and it's about Indian mythology or religion, actually. I don't know. It's about Hindu, and it's an action game with that aesthetic and stuff, and it's really neat. It is very, very good. There's also DLC coming for Neo 2 on October 15. That's Darkness in the Capital, which, if you enjoy Neo, I'm sure you're going to be looking forward to that. Still going. There's a lot of games coming out. On October 20, Amnesia Rebirth, which is a horror game, a good horror game series. I'm looking forward to another one. It's been a while since there has been a new Amnesia game. I think about 7 years, but that's coming out on October 20. Transformers Battlegrounds comes out on October 23, which I wasn't looking forward to until I saw a clip of it, and it actually looks pretty fun. So there you go. On October 27, there's going to be a massive JRPG to look forward to, with the Legend of Heroes Trails of Cold Steel 4 landing. Now, if it's anything like the previous 3, that's about 70 or 80 hours worth of gameplays, and you're going to have to play the previous 3 to make sense of the 4th. So if you haven't played them before, get playing. You've got a lot of catching up to do by October 27. And then, I don't know, some game called Watch Dogs that comes out on October 29. I think some people are looking forward to that. Not me.
Never heard of that one.
No. But yeah, it's coming out. That'll be good, I think, for somebody. And then on October 30, the next game in the Dark Pictures series comes out. This one's Little Hope. So the first one was Man of Medan, and that was actually very good. I enjoyed that a great deal. It's meant to be, you know, a series of little horror games that they're doing, each one that has a slightly different theme and stuff. And Little Hope is the second. So hopefully it matches up with the quality of the first one.
So that's by the guys that did Until Dawn, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
that's right.
Superman.
And it's basically
Awesome.
it's basically the same game. It's just repackaged with slightly different characters, but they all play the same way, and that's not a bad thing, because Until Dawn was a good game indeed.
I'm so excited. When they delayed it from September, my God, I almost died.
Yeah, but it makes sense as a Halloween game anyway, so you know it comes out at about the right time, I guess, for that, the spooks. And then, finally, for the PlayStation, there is a little Nipponichi game that is actually very visually interesting and promises to be very good. It's called Mad Rat Dead. That comes out on October 30. This is like a rhythm game platformer thing by the same creator behind the Yomawari series. So Yomawaris are very good little horror games, and I'm looking forward to Mad Rat Dead. You can Google search it up. It has a very nice aesthetic. That is just the PlayStation. Moving on to Nintendo Switch. Okay, I need a breather. I'm scrolling through. So, starting on October 1, we have a game called Warsaw coming out on Switch. Now, Warsaw is, I believe, like Darkest Dungeon, but World War II themed. So, it's interesting. I'll give it a go. On October 1 as well, Ys Origin comes out, and that is
that's really good.
Ys. So, I like saying Ys. It's a game in the Ys franchise, and I'm sure some people will enjoy that a great deal.
It's
very old.
See,
but it's.
you no one heard my horrible pun. I said, is it easy?
It's actually really hard. It's a really hard game.
Moving on. October 1 also brings us Super Mario Bros. 35, which I'm very interested in, and you will want to play that from day one because you only get to play it for about 3 months before Nintendo pulls it again, which is just weird and stupid, but Nintendo being Nintendo is going to do Nintendo things. You can play it for a couple of months starting October 1. Does look good, so it's the kind of game that you probably want to have hanging around and not deleted. But anyway, moving on. There's an awful lot of games that come out on Switch, but most of them are like hidden objects games and stuff, and I'm not going to talk about them. FIFA 21 Legacy Edition comes out on Switch, which is basically FIFA 21 about 7 years ago, and they just haven't bothered to update it. So if you like your footballs and don't mind it being exactly the same as last year's, there you go. It'll be on Switch. Agatha Christie's The ABC Murders comes out on October 6th, and that actually is a good game, I believe. I believe. I think it's been out on other platforms for a while, but it comes out on Switch. And if you like your detective games, then you probably enjoy that one. Game Dev Tycoon comes out on October 8th. That's a well-regarded, I believe, Aussie-developed simulator where you get to make your game studio of your dreams and make all kinds of weird game names and watch them sell a lot of copies, which doesn't happen in real life, I can assure you, but it's a fun fantasy. On October 13, Prinny 1 and 2 comes out. Now, Prinny are very difficult platformers from Nipponichi, very, very difficult platformers, and they'll send you a little bit nutty, but because they're pretties, which is the penguin characters from the Disgaea games, then it's kind of cute. So there you go. Robotic Notes also comes out on the Nintendo Switch. That's October 13. What else have we got? Lots more names. Jackbox Party Pack 7, which is great if you're able to go to parties at the moment, which you can't, most of the world. So, wrong time to release a party game, peeps. Shantae Risky's Revenge comes out on Switch on October 15. That'll be good. Shantae's always good, reliable fun. Even if you played them before, you'll want to play them again. Mario Kart Live Home Circuit comes out on October 16 for Switch. If you have a house that is big and you can do augmented reality games where you actually have little carts driving around, then there you go. Most of the rest of us don't. So that game's going to be completely pointless.
Well, it is going to come in the post.
The reason I said Postal is I just saw Postal. It's on the list underneath the Mario Kart games, so I got confused for a second there. But it is also coming out on Nintendo Switch.
That's a real mood whiplash there.
Yeah, going from the bright, charming Mario Kart to Postal.
Plus, everyone knows Postal 2 is the better game because you get milk and then you start burning books and all this other stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great game.
I've never played a Postal game. I'm not sure I want to start. But anyway. My Universe Fashion Boutique comes out on October 27. Don't know what that is. But
Wait, what is it called?
My Universe Fashion Boutique comes out on October 27.
It's not the same series as the 3DS fashion games, is it?
Well, no, that's why I'm saying that it's not, but I want it to be.
Okay. I'm sad. Those are the games.
Yeah, they are, which is why I mention it, because I wish that Nintendo and... Was it Koei that made those ones? Anyway, that series, I want it to come back, so, yeah. Some Sonic games come out on Switch. These, like, double packs with Monkey Ball. So, but it's Sonic, so who cares? Mad Rat Dead also comes out on October 30. Don't say that one when you're not sober. That's going to be a very hard game name to say. Pikmin 3 Deluxe comes out on October 32, which will be fun. Who doesn't like Pikmin? Pikmin is a charming little thing. And that's it. That's it. I'm sure I'll probably miss one or two other games, but I'm tired now. So, Harvard, of all of those games mentioned, you get to pick one. Just one.
Oh, that is so many. I'm going back through my list, and I'm thinking, look, I'm gonna be honest. I think I'll play East Origins again. Fun fact, East Origin was one of the first games I bought with my own money, and so it has a special spot for me. But every now and then I go back to it, and it holds up really well. Because it came out on the PC in Japan in, I think, 2006, and it came out in the West in 2013. And even that gap of time, it has not aged at all. Like, the boss battles and the gameplay and the mechanics are all really, really solid.
Cool.
I played it for the first time when the PS4 version came out a couple of years ago, and it was still really good.
Yeah, it feels modern,
It's
right?
great. Yeah, it feels like a new game.
Cool. That's good. Yeah, I got nothing to add there. So that's a good choice, Harvard. 10 out of 10. Thumbs up. Matt, your turn. Pick one.
I'm picking one that you neglected to mention,
There we go.
even though it's in the list you were looking at, assuming I'm looking at the same list, is Pio Fiore Fated Memories, which is the new Automate game. This one is kind of a mafia-themed one, which should be quite interesting. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Always, I think Automate always does really great stuff. So looking forward to seeing how this one turns out.
Do you say a mafia-themed Otome game?
What did you say, Harvard?
Did you say it like a mafia-themed Otome game?
Yes.
That sounds great.
Yeah, that one I did not mention. So you're right, Matt. I did neglect to mention that one. It's because it has a strange name, and I'm just kind of skipping over them when I've got so many to read through.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does look good. The art style is lovely.
Yeah, and it seems like the leaders of the different mafia gangs are the love interests, which is interesting.
Just like in real life, huh?
Yes.
Moving on, Trent.
Well, I'm not going to say Animal Crossing
Watch
again.
Dogs.
There's actually games coming out this month, which is good. Not like the past ones. I will say I won't say Watch Dogs, even though I really want to, because I know you hate it, and you know. I didn't really like 2 that much. I thought 1 was a better game for reasons, and
Whoa.
yes, like 1 and 2 have like the reverse issues. So everyone's like, oh, but the protagonist in 1's like a broody, like emo kind of you killed my family kind of guy. But like in 2, it's the reverse. They're bloody YouTube kids. Like it's just aggravatingly like. Pop culture slam.
Wait, hang on. Did you say, how can they possibly have issues? They're not political games. They're from Ubisoft.
The ad's political. The game's not gonna be, but the ad's political.
But free looks like it could be cool, but I'll hold off saying I'm hyped for it until it actually comes out and I actually play it. But anyway,
It's got Stormzy in it.
It's got Stormzy in it. It also has the original protagonist from number 1. Yeah. That means it's
but you have to pay extra to get him as DLC, and nobody's going to do that.
No. My game's going to be the Mario Kart race circuit. I know we need a giant house, but damn it, I'm going to convince everyone to buy it, and then we're all going to have.
I thought you were so going to say, damn it, I'm going to build a very big house to play it. That is some dedication, actually building a house so you can actually play this game.
But yes, everyone I've already told who has a Switch is interested in the game. They're going to buy the game, and then we're going to have multiplayer, and it's going to be great.
Honestly, it looks like so much fun, but I just don't have the house for it, or space or anything like that. It's one of those weird things that it amazes me that a Japanese company of all companies came up with it, given how small a lot of the houses in Japan are. I mean, I just can't imagine the population of people that can actually play that thing are going to. The numbers aren't going to be big, but it is a great idea. I think it's wonderful. Very creative, very Nintendo. So if you got the space, yeah, good on you. You're lucky. Buy it. And Tina, your choice. Pick one.
I'm all about the Little Hope. As I probably said. I didn't even wait till the end of the second round. I'm like, yes, please, God, give it to me. No, I'm so excited. I like all of their stuff from the thing that annoys me the most though is that you probably know they have some VR games, like The Impatient, and I can't handle VR, so I have to play with the thing on top of my head and pretend, and then look at the TV. And it's so good because it's set in the same world as Till Dawn. So you're actually, like, if you haven't played it, it's set in like the kind of like the hospital that's played in the movie, played in the game, but it's back in like the 50s or something. I don't know. It's really good, but I haven't finished it yet because I have to like prepare myself, because even then I still get sick. So I do like half an hour at a time, and I just wish they'd make a non-VR version. If they could release that as well with Little Hope, I'd be very happy.
Yeah, that was actually The Impatient was a good game. I quite like that one.
So I should keep going regardless of the violent throwing up.
Yeah, keep going. Just say it's enhancing the horror for you. You know, it's just it's part of the experience.
Yeah. But no, yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, it should be good. I definitely they're very reliable. And Men of Medan was good. That was a haunted boat one. This one, what's the setting of this one? This is like a village,
like
isn't it, or a house?
Little town.
Yeah.
Because you don't get much other than like the like trailers, and it doesn't tell you much, and it's just creepy and in like a little town, and you're like, oh yeah.
Yeah, it should be good. Definitely looking forward to that. As for me, I guess my pick will be, well, I'm one of the guys that actually has gone through the Legends of Heroes Trails of Cold Steel 1 through 3, so I can step into 4, having not have to play 150 hours, 160 hours worth of game to get to that point. So I can be excited about this game, and I am excited about this game. I think it's going to be good. That series is, it kind of took the baton for the traditional JRPG this generation, really. So yeah, give me more Trails of Cold Steel. I am disappointed that Elise is not like the main character of the whole thing by now, because she's obviously the best. But it is what it is, I guess.
I'm just imagining one day someone's going to set aside a full week of doing nothing but playing Trails of Cold Steel, and they may or may not be up to date to get to the full game.
Yeah, it's those are epics. But we've discussed it plenty often in the podcast in the past. Those are one of those rare games that actually deserve to be that long, because they actually have themes and stuff that last that long. It's not just there for content's sake. It's good stuff, and yeah. But they are all direct sequels to one another, so you do have to play them in order.
No, maybe they can release a abridged version.
Do a little audio CD, just kind of reading through the plot of the first couple, just so you can catch up, and then play the fourth one. That'd be a good idea. All right, that was a long segment. We talked about a lot of games. We'll go to some music. Let's put, who are we going to put on the spot? Let's put Matt on the spot. Matt, pick a song that we're going to play. Make it a good one.
We put me on the spot here.
It's my job.
I'll think of something. Surely Pia Fiore must have some good music.
Yeah, I can look for it. It's going to be funny seeing Alan try to trace down some music from that.
I mean, it's out. It's a bit out in Japan, so there should be music somewhere.
想の狭間 心の中に
Welcome back, everybody. Okay, so at the point in which we are recording this podcast, we are halfway through Tokyo Game Show. It is a Saturday, and Tokyo Game Show runs from Thursday to Sunday. So we can't exactly talk about what is coming over the next 2 days, which is unfortunate because if you look at the streams, Tokyo Game Show being a digital-only event this year, if you look at the streams that are coming up, there's going to be some good stuff. We're going to see Koei Tecmo announce a new Dynasty Warriors. We're 99% sure that's happening. Which will be great, the next generation of Dynasty Warriors. Let's see how that goes. We've also got, no doubt, some bits and pieces coming from a bunch of other developers and publishers as well, but we can only talk about what we've seen so far. And of the 2 days of streams, there's been some good bits and pieces that have come. I think the Nier stream at the start of the event was really good. Let's start by talking about that. And let's go to Matt. Matt, I have a question for you. Are you going to play that mobile Nier game?
I'll give it a go. I like Nier. I get bored of mobile gacha games very quickly. I even am starting to get bored of Sinnoh Ellis, which I was really enjoying for a while. So, I mean, I'll give it a go because it's Nier and it's Yoko Taro, but I don't know how much I'll actually enjoy it and how long I'll stick with it for. We'll see.
Apparently, from what my reading between the lines, I guess, in terms of what was announced at that stream, it looks like this one is actually sharing plot points which are pretty critical to Nier. So you're probably going to have to play it if you're a big fan of Nier.
Yes.
Wait, is it standalone or is it connected to Automata or is it connected to the first one?
Well, they're all connected to one another, really.
Yeah,
that's the whole point.
Are they?
Yeah.
What?
Standalone, but part of the same universe, same overall
Oh,
thing.
didn't know that.
Well, Nier Automata takes place 2,000 years after Nier, I think.
Oh,
1,000 years?
that's why I assumed it was just gonna be like just a completely different game, you know, like actually, I'm not gonna say that.
But yeah. We also got to see some footage of Nier in action, and I hadn't actually seen any of the game in action beforehand. I don't know how much had been shared. They actually showed some just raw gameplay, and it looks really good. I loved Nier. I was one of the few people that managed to play it before stock got really short, and they never actually released that one for download on PlayStation 3 or whatever. So that's become a bit of a rare game, but I really enjoyed it, and I'm really glad that it's coming back. It looks like they've done a good job in terms of sprucing it up, so it looks modern enough, but at the same time they haven't lost the soul of it, which is unfortunately what it looks like has happened to Demon Souls remake. It looks like they've lost the soul of Demon Souls, but unfortunately, yeah. It really doesn't look. I'm not impressed by what I've seen of Demon Souls, but that wasn't from TGS. That was from beforehand. I am very impressed with what I've seen of Nier remake. It is unfortunate it's not Daddy Nier though. It's the other Nier.
Yes.
Brother, big brother Nier. Is that?
Brother
Do you
Nier.
know if
Yeah.
do you know if Platinum is involved with this one?
No, it's got nothing to do with Platinum.
The mechanics look very inspired by that. I don't know if it's more action-y than the original, but it definitely looks like it's taking some cues from Automata.
It looked very much like I remember playing it. Now, I say that having not played Nier for about 9 years. So I may be mixing a little bit of Nier with Nier Automata up, but it did look and feel much like I remember the original Nier being. So I don't know if they're going to. I'm sure they'll refine it a bit because the original Nier was a game that a lot of people didn't get along with from a gameplay perspective. So I'm sure they'll do a little bit here and there to make it a little bit more palatable. But I hope they don't mess with it too much because so much of that game was kind of great because it was unique in what it was. So it'll be a tricky balancing act for them, I think. And the good news is the TGS stream gave me confidence about it. So, moving on, what else did we see? We saw Sega. Sega did a show, and they seem to have announced Virtua Fighter's coming back, which is pretty out there. I don't think anybody expected that to come. But Matt, as the resident fighting game dude, are you looking forward to that? Whatever form that is?
Yeah.
They're a bit vague on it.
Yeah, they're a bit vague about that. I'm not sure if they were actually announcing a new game. They talked a lot about, a sort of esports program around it. So I guess we'll see what comes out of that. But yeah, it should be. Hopefully, it is a new game. That'll be exciting. It's about time for a new game. It's been almost enough time since Virtua Fighter 5 came out that people have started to learn the basics. So, of a very complicated game.
Indeed.
Brutally complicated.
Yeah, I'm not going to pick it up if it's brutally complicated. I just want like a simple fighty game every once in a while. I just want I just like a good con every once in a while, even though I hate Call of Duty. But I just the mechanics, they're really good mechanics for shooting. Why can't there be that but fighting games?
There is. It's called Dead or Alive.
With less fan service.
I was gonna say Street Fighter, but sure, Dead or Alive.
I mean, the whole point of Dead or Alive is it's a super accessible fighter. It's looking beyond the fan service, which is hard to look beyond at times, I know. But looking beyond the fan service of Dead or Alive, it is a very good accessible fighting game, and probably more along the lines of what you're looking for, Trent. Virtua Fighter is not what you're looking for, I can assure you. Virtua Fighter is hardcore of the most hardcore fighting game for the people that like their fighting games with technical precision to the point you probably need to do courses and get belts and stuff to progress through the ranks. That's what it was always there for, and they were very good at achieving that. Who knows how that's going to work on the esports scene? I can't imagine it's going to be huge because not a lot of people are going to want to play it. But good on them for giving it a go, I think.
I mean, it's always had a sort of small and dedicated competitive community around it.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously endured and people are looking forward to it, and the announcement was a genuinely exciting thing. And it was always, if it was going to come back, esports was the way to go, just like pretty much every other fighting game. They need that competitive community to sustain it. So I hope it's a new game as well. I think that would be... It would be weird for them to expect to build a big esports community around the older Virtua Fighters. So... what else do we see? We saw over TGS, we've seen an awful lot of Chinese games this year as well. There's been quite a few streams from Chinese publishers and developers and stuff. And Harvard and I have been online chatting about this pretty much every time there's a stream popped up in the DDNet Slack. So Harvard, from all of the Chinese games that you've seen that have been announced, talked about, showed off, what are your thoughts?
Oh man, I have some really spicy opinions that I'm not going to say on the podcast. Just to clarify for anyone listening, I am Chinese. However, I live in Australia, so I'm somewhat disconnected from the culture. I don't know. There was one that you linked me yesterday, I think, which did look really good. The one
that was being developed by, well, they originally Australian but moved over to Beijing. Is that the one?
I think so. It was, to be honest, I don't remember anything about it except for thinking that it looks pretty good. Oh, the Rewinder, that's the one.
The Rewinder, yeah, that's the one. So that's
it reminds me a lot of there was actually a lot of games that like this, where it was side-scrolling horror-ish, very cultural, and the graphics and the aesthetic that this one has, I think is going to be really good.
Yeah, it looked really nice. It was two Australians, I think. It's a tiny little micro studio of two. They were based in Melbourne, but decided to relocate over to Beijing. So they are now, I guess, a Chinese developer, but they do have that Australian connection. So it looks like an interesting mix of things. It looks like one of those games. Funnily enough, it reminded me a little bit of a game called Tokyo Duck, which was released a couple of years ago, or last year
Which I
actually.
will play one day.
You should absolutely play it. But the reason it was interesting to me was Tokyo Dark was made by a bunch of Western people who had relocated to Japan, and it was kind of like their look from the outside, from within, about what they saw in Japan, and it's a fascinating mix of distance, but also practical experience, I guess. And it looks similar in the sense that it looks like it's a game done by, I think, Chinese Australians from about Chinese culture. So it's that kind of the mix of perspectives on there that gives it a unique look. I'm definitely keen on trying that one out.
I should start making my own games.
You should.
And I thought Matt, you really liked I'm gonna pronounce it. Anno Mutation M, or whatever it's called.
Yeah, the Cyberpunk one looked really good. Really, really good. I think that was being done by a fairly large team by indie standards, and they did bring in people from Japan and Italy and places. At least as far as the promo video that they did showed, it was a pretty multicultural team working on it. And yeah, it looks much more cyberpunk than a certain cyberpunk game that's coming out by a very big studio soon.
Wonder what that's called.
Yeah, I think it definitely looks good, and I can't wait to try that one out. I'm just really enthusiastic about the Chinese game industry in general. I think because I have been to TGS over the last 6 or 7 years, every year I've seen the Chinese development community really participate in that event and grow, and the games that they're producing are much more impressive as well. We haven't seen it at TGS so far this year, but the Dark Souls-like Journey to the West game looks like everything I've ever wanted in a video game, to be honest. I can't wait to give that one a go. But yeah, I'm really impressed with what I've seen from Chinese developers, and they definitely take TGS seriously, so it's good to see. There was an interesting statistic, actually, just briefly. They mentioned it on the Huawei show. And yes, I've been watching every single stream on TGS, so even ones that are just as utterly boring as Huawei showing off phones. But there was an interesting little stat that came out of that one, that apparently something like 60% of all global video game audiences now come from Asia Pacific, with a big bulk, a big number of that coming from China. But yeah, the Asia Pacific region is now the #1 market for video games in the world by a long way, well and truly eclipsing America. So that being the case, we are going to see studios from all around the world have to engage with the way that Asians like video games, because that's where the money will be. So that's good to see, because that means that maybe they can stop doing Call of Duties.
Also, Matt, I have a question for you now.
Yeah.
So we recently found out that Konami is going to be doing a compilation. Actually, do we talk about this section or next section?
Oh, we'll talk about it this section, next section, whatever. We're easygoing, Harvard.
Yeah, so they're releasing a compilation of the earlier Metal Gear Solid games. And I know that Matt very famously did a change of heart regarding Kojima. He didn't like him very much until he played Death Stranding, and now he thinks Kojima is an auteur. So do you think this will compel you to go back and play the early Metal Gear Solid games in that light and see if they hold up?
Well, it's not that Konami is doing them; it's that Konami has already done them. You can go and buy all those games.
What?
You can
they were dropped last night.
They were dropped last night. You can actually.
This is what I get for sleeping.
You can actually go and play. You can go and buy all of them from GOG right now. Metal Gear Solid, Metal Gear Solid 2, and another Metal Gear Solid. So there's 3 of them, but they're not a compilation. They're just released as individual drops. But yeah, I'm interested because I haven't played Metal Gear Solid since deciding that Kojima's actually a pretty smart dude. I would be interested in seeing, now that I did get enough into Death Stranding that I wanted to analyze it more deep, I guess, and engage with Kojima on Kojima's terms. It'll be interesting to see if I am willing to do so with Metal Gear Solid. I'm definitely keen to investigate that. So I will do so, Harvard. I'll let you know.
See, I love Death Stranding, but I'm still not interested in Metal Gear. I don't know. Shooters I'm just tired of. Like, I guess I know it's got a lot of themes and that sort of thing, but
it's got a lot of themes.
They're not shooters if you don't want them to be.
But I
just
I
play them
hate stealth
without
games.
using your gun.
I hate stealth games. They're just so boring. But like Death Stranding was just perfect. Like, it had like wankery music at the start where it's like, like, is it like like if you're watching a James Bond movie and then suddenly there's like a introduction with cool music, but it was in a video game, and then it was like just delivering packages. It was great. It was the best game.
It wasn't
But
just
really
about that.
not selling
It was
this game.
also about Norman Reedus' butt. I mean, that was a big part of Death Stranding. Let's face it.
And
Yeah.
Monster Energy drinks.
Yes.
But moving on, there is something I wanted to ask you, Tina, since you're on the podcast, and we've actually met at TGS a couple of times when you were off there, promoting Quantum Suicide, and you've
Getting the sore feet from working the floor.
yeah, that must be exhausting. And I remember actually, I think it was 2 years ago, was it? They dropped you in like the dating simulator section of TGS for some reason, rather than the indie section. So there was all these games where very, very beautiful people modeling as ways of promoting the games, and there was you, the Aussie developer with a little stand showing
Wait, was
off
that the one
Quantum.
where they were having like fake weddings?
Yeah, fake weddings. That was
Oh
great
my
fun.
god, I so wanted to partake, but someone had to man the booth.
The dating, for people who have never been to TGS, if you ever get a chance to go to TGS, the dating game section is just, it's something that will open your eyes. It's amazing. I love that section every year.
Last year.
Sorry?
They removed it last year.
Did they?
Yeah.
Did they?
Yeah, they didn't have enough people, so it got cut.
Oh, I think there was like one or two games that they were showing off individually that were like dating games, but they didn't have that whole
they didn't have that
kind of
giant romance section. Yeah.
That's right. They didn't. That was disappointing. Hopefully they bring it back. There's certainly an audience for those kinds of games. But what I wanted to ask you was, as somebody who has been to TGS and stuff, and you've obviously experienced the energy and the excitement of it all. Obviously, they didn't have much of a choice with 2020 in terms of going virtual. But do you think that there's enough from TGS to still be an event of interest?
When it's not online or when it is online?
This year, this year. Has there been enough of it it's been still worth doing rather than just cancelling completely?
Yeah, no, I think it's still worth it. It's just I really enjoy the actual physical. Online is all well and good, and it's good for watching the trailers and the announcements, but I don't know, I like being on the floor with people. As weird as that sounds, don't take that out of context. I don't know, there's just a different energy when there's actually when people especially when TGS first opens and then you see everyone running full pace from the front to get into the line so they can play the games that they've waited for, and we'll have the queue stopped after an hour because it's already full for the entire day. Just seeing that kind of energy and people willing to kill each other to play a demo, I really missed that part.
I will never forget it's always Sony. Sony booth is always ridiculously popular, as well as Monster Hunter. I mean, everybody knows Monster Hunter is. And then for some weird reason, the Konami dating game with the pretty girls, what's it called?
Love Plus?
Love Plus, that one always had the same thing, where the line gets so full, they have a ticketing system for people that maybe want to get a chance at getting into the line if somebody drops out of the line, and they've just got lines for backup lines, and it's all very organized and somehow works because that's Japan and that's how they do things. But it's the energy of TGS is always amazing, and I have actually, weirdly enough, taken more information in already from TGS than I do usually, because when I go to TGS, especially the last couple of years, I've been kind of running from interview to interview, and I don't get much of a chance to just absorb all the stuff that's going on. And this year, obviously, I've been sitting there just watching stream after stream, so I have taken more information in. But you're right, I do agree there is something about the energy of being on the floor at the event that is missing, unfortunately. Not that that's TGS's fault; they can't do anything about it.
Of course,
COVID's out kicking everyone's backside, but
hopefully everything will be fine for next year.
Yes, fingers crossed. Yes, definitely. The other thing that I've missed is the shopping.
Oh
The,
yes, like
the
the merch hole.
merchandise section. Yeah, the merchandise section is a favorite. I always end up spending way too much money over there, and this year it's just not the same when you have to buy it off a website. It's just not
Yeah.
as much fun.
I think the first year I was there, I was the romance section and the parts of the merch hall were together, and so I was like across from Kojima Productions before they had released any games yet, so there was no standing, and it was absolutely insane. Like there was this massive line to buy T-shirts of a game that hadn't even come out yet, and they were sold out like so quickly, and everyone's like, "Give me a shirt!" And it was just crazy watching. Yeah, like, yeah.
That
insane.
one, and also the Square Enix music booth is always nuts because they always have
Yes.
like one kind of special edition signed thing, and because they have that one special edition signed thing, the lineup for that music booth is already 40 minutes long.
Yeah.
Somehow within 2 minutes of the doors opening, I don't know how they managed to get a 40-minute line so quickly, but they do. And the thing that always really amuses me is this is the business days. I never go during the general population days. I don't go on the weekends. So this is just the people who actually work
wow.
in the
So
industry.
you've never seen the swampingness of general public. Like,
Yeah, I'm a little bit of an elitist,
got it.
and I'm not a big fan of crowds so thick that you just kind of
Yep.
get washed away in the sweat of the hordes.
Yep.
But I mean, it's bad enough whenever I go to TGS, they put up the numbers every day, and it's 40,000, 50,000 people or whatever on the day, and I'm thinking, yeah, it was pretty busy. 3-hour lines here and there for.
Yeah.
The big games, and then you look at the numbers that they pull for the general pop days, and it's like 150,000.
100,000,
It's like, oh my god, it's like 3 times what I experienced. No thanks.
Yeah, the
So
business days are the nice, easy ones where you kind of just chill for 2 days, even though you're still constant. It's a constant like come through, but you're still a bit chill. But then as soon as it's public days, you just like you need more hands, you need more people. Like you can't keep up with anything.
would you say that the TGS has been good for your game? Because your game is one of those very unique Australian games that actually does work at TGS, I think. But did you get a good response?
Yeah. So like the first year that we were there, because we were in the romance section, TGS were just like, "You're the first non-Japanese game ever to be in the romance section, and we love you." And I'm like, "Oh, thanks." They're like, "Come back next year." I'm like, "Okay." But no, like it's always been received pretty well. Obviously, people get quite shocked when they're like, "Wait, this isn't a Japanese game?" And I'm like, "No, it's not." And as I said previously in a Twitter conversation, for some reason I'm always asked if I'm Russian, and I'm still not 100% sure why, but I'll just take it as a compliment. But no, like they've always been really, really, really receptive. Like no one's ever been like, "Ooh." From Australia, gross. Or at least not to my face. So thank you for being polite, Japan.
Well, we'll definitely talk more about Quantum Suicide later on in the podcast in the last section. But we'll jump to some music now. I just realised these are going very long, and Alan's going to yell at me for taking up too much of his time in editing. So let's give the music choice to Trent now. Trent, you pick one song, and you can't say that you weren't prepared for it. I gave Matt no warning. You've had a whole section to pick a song, so
I as soon as earlier I'm like, oh, I'm gonna get it, and I'm gonna have no warning, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna look up something for like a song, and then I just didn't do it.
I did, if you want one.
Welcome back, everybody. All right, so Mario came out by the time you listen to this podcast, about 2 weeks ago. That's been the collection of the three 3D Mario games that were pretty popular: Mario 64, Mario Sunshine, and Mario Galaxy. And the DDNet team has been in heated debate since then about whether those games are actually good or not. And it kind of got us thinking, I guess, more broadly about what video games have aged well as such, and what helps a game age well, I guess, is the thesis of this little section. So we'll start with Matt, because he has very strong opinions about this Mario game, Mario 64 in particular. For some reason, he thinks it's bad, but he's wrong. But I will give him the moment to explain himself, and perhaps tell us from your perspective, Matt, what does make a game age well?
In the context of Mario 64, I think it's probably nostalgia, because I think there seems to be a line between the people who love it and the people who played it on the Nintendo 64 and are now revisiting it again. And on the other side of the line, people like me who never played the original and are now playing this game for the first time, and trying to play a platformer game where you cannot ever see where you're going or aim your jumps properly because you have to fight the camera every step of the way. That is a frustrating experience.
No, you just have to commit the levels to muscle memory, Matt. That's the point. You just got to remember them that well. You don't need to even look at the screen while you're playing.
That's actually a really interesting thing about a lot of old games, is that I think people who got very good at them as a kid because it was the only thing they had, that lets you look past a lot of the problems with the camera and the controls. This just feels natural now.
Yeah, well, I guess that kind of cuts to the point of this whole discussion, is those games, Mario 64 being a Nintendo 64 game, that's the same era as the PlayStation 1. The developers were very much still learning how to do 3D back then. They just didn't know. Like the rule book about how to do camera, how to do character movement, how to all of these things, they just were. It was unknown territory, and they had to. Yeah. They were learning all this stuff kind of on the go, which is the products that we got were the learning process. And it is interesting to me which games from that particular generation are still relevant, interesting, and enjoyable today, because I do agree that for a lot of people Mario 64 is not particularly enjoyable. I love it, but then, like you said, Matt, I played it a lot as a kid.
I am enjoying Mario Sunshine a lot, which seems to be the one that everyone hates. So I don't know. Maybe I'm just.
You're just a contrarian.
I like Sunshine. I don't know.
I mean, I like how Sunshine actually makes Mario a convicted criminal, like in the canon of Mario. That's pretty cool. You know, he's a bit of a bad boy. Is there Mario?
What I find interesting is, like, with Mario is Sunshine is sort of like the Odyssey of that era. So it's sort of like a little bit of a light-hearted, sort of like, you know, they're on vacation kind of game, and then, you know, you've got two serious kind of platformers either side of it, but then in the middle you've got this Sunshine title, which seems a bit more foreign and a bit random compared to the other two platformers in that collection.
Oh, I only just got what you meant by that. I was like, were there two other platformers on GameCube that were really dark and serious? Oh no, but I totally see what you mean.
Yes, yeah. But yeah, everyone's talking about the Mario 3D collection. Like, it's the only thing people are going to be remembering. I think that the biggest thing is a lot of people say that 64 should have been the DS remake, really. Like, or at least it should have been like a remastered one. There's a lot of changes which I did in the DS, which fixed a lot of loopholes and issues which 64 had in general, which made it a lot more playable. And a lot of people like me the DS version was the game which a lot more people had to play. So I probably played like a few levels of 64 back in the day, but the DS version was the first time I actually played it and actually completed it and actually was like, oh, this is actually a fun, game. But I also had the benefit of all the changes they did to put it onto the DS. They made the camera a little bit better. They introduced a few more, like there was Yoshi, for example, and a few other more mini fun things they added to make the game a little bit more accessible for that platform.
Yeah, that's what Alan's always been saying because he is noted a young person in our DDNet crew, and so he
Hey.
grew up playing Super Mario 64 DS, and so going back to the original N64, I think that's why he hates it so much, is because it's like something that you remember from your childhood, and it's ingrained in your muscle memory, and you know why you love it, and then you just play like a slightly worse version of it.
Yeah, I mean, as a package, I didn't think it was a very good collection. We've certainly seen a lot of better, retro compilations on Switch, and yeah.
Yeah, I
But
hate how hit or miss it's been because there's been incredible compilations that make me wish every single compilation was like this, and then there's been other ones where it's just okay, here's 3 games, have fun.
yeah.
Well, that said, though, everyone goes on about like Crash and Spyro games being like the pinnacle of like, why didn't Nintendo do this sort of thing? But they did, yes, they're remastered sort of, but they're games where it's like, well, they weren't really that. They're like the 64 games. Like,
They weren't
they
very good
weren't
in the
really that
first
great
place.
to begin with. Like,
Yeah, that's gonna be great for our podcast. Thanks, Trent.
Wait,
But
do people not agree with this? Crash Bandicoot
I
1 isn't that.
I think they're all terrible as well. So I agree with Trent. I'm actually happy to go down on that sinking ship with him. But yeah, I don't think Crash Bandicoot games are very good. I don't think Spyro games are very good for the same reasons that we were talking about Mario 64 not being very good. I don't think it was anything. I think the developers did the best they could, but they were still learning all the rules about how to make these games work in 3D. And I just think with most of those, I think platformers as a genre did not really come into its own, 3D platformers, I mean, until late into the PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3 era. I think there was just too many issues with the camera, particularly to deal with, and the developers just did not master it until much later on. So I think that the platformers genre as a whole is one that has, the 3D platformer genre as a whole, is one that has not aged well. And yeah, I think that these games are just pure nostalgia. So people who enjoy them are just doing so because they remember enjoying them as a kid.
Well,
I think,
it's like how I love Astrobot. Like, that's a really great VR game. It's dubbed like the Mario of a Sony platform in the sense that it's charming, it's accessible, it's a great game, but it's still very early VR. Like, I think that game itself is probably going to age a little bit more quickly compared to other platforms of this era, and then the sequel's probably going to be a little bit more accessible and more what people remember. But I think that VR game is going to be something which, if we look back and play, even 5 years from now, we might be like, okay, well, this isn't, the platform genre has jumped considerably and done different things now, and it's a lot more accessible, or they've changed things to make players feel a bit better when playing the game. And as those jumps happen, when you go back to the older platformers, they just seem a little bit more janky and not as fun to play.
I mean, virtual reality is still around in a generation or two. That is definitely one where we'll be looking back at the original games and saying exactly the same thing that we're saying about platformers now. Is just there are so many rules that need to be decided on how to do virtual reality properly, and they just don't know. And you can see that they're still struggling to work out how to do a whole bunch of things with virtual reality. And yeah, whether it survives or not is up for debate. But at the moment, the good virtual reality games that we're playing now, I don't think will be remembered well down the track as VR. Just again, not because of any fault of the developers; they've done the best they can with what they know at the moment. But these things all take time to establish.
One day in 10 years, someone will figure out how to make movement work in VR, and we'll look back on all these kind of click to move point where you want to move and teleport over there.
Yeah, the teleporting games.
What were these people thinking?
Well, the hardware will catch up. Like already now,
Yeah.
there's a lot of jumps in terms of what you can get as add-ons for VR headsets and stuff like that to make it a little bit more accessible. And we're also starting to look at more stuff which is more streaming to the headset rather than cabled in. So the hardware is going to jump, and that's going to change the way the games are developed for it.
I think we're gonna see a lot of games where the player stands still and things happen to them, like Beat Saber. There's gonna be a lot more Beat Sabers.
Yeah, to me, that seems to be where VR is at its strongest, I think, is where you are stationary. Like, in the game, your role is to be stationary and not move around. That seems to me to be where the good VR is at the moment. Whether they work out movement down the track, I don't know. I don't know. I don't think that movement and the headset works particularly well, especially since there is that disconnect where if you are meant to move around in the world, you kind of want to move around in the real world, and then you start bumping into TVs and things and breaking things and stuff. So, yeah, I don't know. I think the better VR is where you're quite stationary.
Can I tangent back to one thing about remasters and games aging well, right? Because I recently played Mafia Definitive Edition, and that game, the thing I think has aged really well is the story, because it's a period piece. It was set in the 1930s, and so it doesn't feel dated at all. It wasn't trying to be current. It was trying to make some kind of timeless story. So that game that came out in 2002, the story, the really bad parts of it kind of got sanded away by Hangar 13, and now they just kept the stuff that really stands up. And I think the Definitive Edition works really well. And I compared that to, if anyone remembers Grand Theft Auto 3, you can't remake that game. There is nothing redeemable about that game's plot or characters or story.
I mean,
that
there's
would
nothing.
work well in 2020.
There's nothing redeemable about GTA in general.
What I remember and loved about GTA 3 and Vice City, like that era, is probably less the story. It was probably more getting a car, turning all the cheats, and just driving around. And the soundtrack was great. It had a great soundtrack for like that sort of era. It was 80s, it was 90s. Like, it was great. But that's what I remember about the game. And then I see people like trying to, like, there's homebrew versions on the Switch and stuff like that. I'm like, well, you don't really need it. Like, the biggest game which is constantly ported and is on every single platform in terms of the GTA series is the current one, because arguably the current one is actually the best one.
Yeah, it just advances forward pretty much. It's
the best one until the next one. I guess that's the thing with GTA. They're all kind of games for the here and now, which is nothing. There's nothing wrong with that, I guess, in a sense, and certainly they're successful enough games for that reason. But yeah, in terms of games that last, I don't think GTAs do. I think there's something in what Harbour said, that it's the narrative is important. I think that of all the genres out there that do survive or are still remain relevant and interesting and playable later on, the RPG is one that lasts. Most good RPGs are as playable now as they were, and as enjoyable now as they were back then. So that is, for me, that's kind of where the genre, in terms of the good games that are still playable and enjoyable, much later down the track. I think story-driven stuff is where it's at. Point-and-click adventure games are another one. Those are
Monkey Islands.
Yeah, Monkey Island and stuff. They're all as playable now as they ever were. Yeah. It's those games where the quality of the game isn't reliant on the technology, if that makes sense. Platformers are kind of the opposite. The quality of the game is very much reliant on the technology. Another good example, I think, ages horribly, is sports games. If you go back and try and play a PlayStation 1 era FIFA game or whatever, it's very difficult. It's very unenjoyable. And those games, you love them as kids or when you played them when they were new, but every year, on balance, sports games move forward and they get better, and they definitely leave the last ones behind. And it's a very technological driven genre. So I think that's really where it is. The timeless stuff is the stuff that is just written well, as opposed to video game made well.
I think one thing that's going to be really interesting to see how it's aged now that it's just been re-released overnight is Metal Gear Solid 2. just in terms of how it relates to the state of the world today, and that when it came out, it was very future looking, and it seemed kind of conspiracy theory, bizarre thing, talking all this, predicting fake news and memes and all that kind of stuff. And it's now, looking back on it now with where the world is at now, it's like, well, this is kind of this almost kind of prophetic game, and so I think it'll be interesting to replay it. It's almost like
Kojima, as the fan of Che Guevara, actually just kind of made some observations about society that maybe Che Guevara was quite right about as well.
Yeah.
So maybe listen to some people. Maybe that's the answer there. I mean, he pretty much nailed the state of the world with Death Stranding, didn't he?
Yeah.
One year in advance, he pretty much nailed it.
Yeah.
On that note, we'll go to some music. We're going to do some music from Metal Gear Solid, and I'm going to leave it up to Alan to pick. I don't know what song it'll be, but he knows Metal Gear Solid, so he'll pick something. It'll be good. We'll be back. We'll talk about Quantum Suicide then. Welcome back, everybody. Okay, so the last section of the podcast is the reason that Tino actually joined the podcast. So thank you for sitting through the last 1 hour and 5 minutes of us being absolute idiots. So you can talk up your game. But in all seriousness, Quantum Suicide, it's a very good game. Very, very good game. For people who are listening to the podcast who maybe haven't heard of it before, it is a Danganronpa-like, is the way I like to characterize it. It's one of those kind of death games where characters keep dying, and you need to make sure that you're not the one that is doing the dying, and you have a chance to work out the mysteries and get through it all. This time around, unlike a insane robotic bear, as in Danganronpa, you instead have an insane AI, which is pretty cool. I like to think of her as Hatsune Miku gone bad, which is really nice. She's my hero. But tell me, where did this idea for this game come from? Because it is enormously complex conceptually, and I looked up quantum suicide, which is an actual thing, just so you all know. You can actually go and Google search it up, and then it'll blow your mind by making you think about stuff too much. But where did all of this come from many years ago when you started the journey in making the game?
So the way it even started was I had just finished all of the VLR games that were out at the time. So the last one wasn't out. I think Virtue's Last Reward was as good as it was getting at the time. And obviously I'd played 999 and I've played all the Danganronpas. And I was like, I want to play a game that is similar. I like the death game, like punishment game thing that some Japanese games have. And I couldn't find any. So I was just like, oh, well, that sucks. And then I moped around for a few days, like, the depression that hits after you've finished a game and you're like, now what do I do with my life? And then I was like, well, I can complain about it or I can just make my own. And that is how it started. So I was just like, sweet as, I'll just make my own then. And that way other versions of me in future might be less sad. So yeah, there's no giant, massive, like, oh, I was thinking about, how quantum suicide affects my everyday life when I almost get hit by cars or anything. Nah, it was just I wanted to play more games and they weren't on. So
about quantum suicide, I sort of went onto like a rabbit hole of research when I was just on YouTube looking at videos, and I'm just like, oh, this is a video on quantum suicide, like the actual concept, not the game. And I'm just like, oh yeah, that's cool. Then I'm like, oh, what this video? Oh, what? Then I'm like looking at the many worlds theory. Then I'm looking at the other weird theories about the brain and consciousness, and then I'm just like, 500 videos deep, and not even looking at quantum suicide anymore.
Yep. How good is it though? Like, it's so interesting that you start and then it's just a rabbit hole of more theories, and they slowly get more bizarre, and you're like, but I love it. So you just go further.
That was one of the things I loved the most about 999 was the way they weaved in real world pseudoscience, like glycerin freezing or whatever it was, and it makes you think, oh, this is plausible. Oh, that's less plausible.
Exactly.
Oh, like, apocalypses. Cool.
So good.
So how much research did you actually do? Because the thing about all these games is that they are all quite, I guess, quite complex in terms of the way that they engage with their ideas, like Danganronpa being an application of game theory, which was what I got into it. That's the reason I find Danganronpa to be particularly interesting, is because I did a lot of study of game theory, so I find it a very interesting topic. But yeah, Virtual Last Reward is another good example, but it's not an area that I'm so familiar with, so I never actually think of that one when I'm talking about these kinds of games. But quantum suicide it's intense. There's a lot of thinking you can do about it. So I guess I'm just keen to know, once you decided on that being your theme, just how much thinking did you do to start to conceptualize the game around it?
So there was a lot of reading, and I don't have a background in any kind of hard science, so it was very much from like baby's first quantum mechanics, and trying to work my way into it to understand the concepts and how it could inform a narrative. But no, it was really good fun, because the thought that at any time in which you could die, you could also live, and then reality pretty much branches into the two possibilities, is just, I don't know, it's just fascinating. Because I'm like, I wonder how many times I've died already, in life, that I just didn't know, because I haven't obviously hit that bad end yet. So no, I can't even remember the question now, because now I'm just thinking about theories. Sorry.
Yeah, that's all right. well, I guess that kind of moves on to the next question. Anyway, it's the whole, I guess, the whole point of quantum suicide. Not that I'm by any means an expert, but the whole point of it is that idea of branching paths or alternatives, conceptual alternatives. The thing about your game is that it does have a lot of branching paths, and there are a lot of different ways that characters can die, and you have a lot of control over which characters die, and so on and so forth. As somebody who has done their own visual novels, I know just how hard it is to keep those logic flows going throughout a game. That must have been a real struggle for you.
Look, there have been times where I've confused myself with timelines, and I'm like, oh, my brain. Like, so to start it off, I just had a giant whiteboard, and then I start at the beginning of the game, and then slowly it's like every time someone dies, obviously it branches, whether, this person dies or this person dies or you die. Because every time you play the deletion game, you can die. Like, it's you're never safe, because I don't like being safe, like, because it's unrealistic. And then, yeah, it just got hella out of control. And, like, the game itself is, like, over 300,000 words that are unique, as in, like, so there's parts that have to repeat for particular plot devices, like, so it doesn't matter in which timeline you're currently in, the spaceship still goes past a black hole, for example, so that still has to repeat. But outside of that, even though major points are similar, because it's technically the same version of reality but with someone else dead, so it's similar, it's still all separate. And so I've had a few whoopsie moments where I've accidentally forgotten who was dead or crossed the lines, and then someone has suddenly magically come back to life, and people are like, whoa, hold on, aren't they dead? And I'm like, yes, one moment please. And then I'm murdering them again to get rid of them. But yeah, it's definitely been a bit in your brain to try and follow it. And then especially, like, when you get towards the end, a few things start crossing over, and so you've got to try and work out which timeline is which and which one is impacting this one. And my brain, it has done a lot of work.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that there's 300,000 words of unique text in the game. I think that's one of the interesting things about visual novels, because I mean, your visual novel in terms of a linear start to finish progression is not like, it's not a super long one compared to some of the other examples of visual novels out there. I think a lot of people don't realize that visual novels, a standard book, a good length book, might be 100,000 words, but your visual novel is 300,000 words, and counting.
Yep.
Just how much writing goes into these things, and then to try and to keep it all consistent, and all the characters, have their own personalities and maintain those personalities, and the situations are logical and all of that kind of stuff. It's just the amount of work that you have to put into those games is intense. So the end result with your game is really impressive, I think.
Thank you.
I think I know you've had big, with launch, and you've had bug squashing missions to go on and stuff, but have you been pretty happy with how people have responded to the game so far?
Yeah, like, don't get me wrong, it could always be more positive, but I'm very happy for the positive I have received, and most of the negative have been fair. So I'm like, yeah, that's fair. Like, I'm not gonna get defensive. I'm like, yeah, I stuffed that part up, didn't I? Like, whoops. But as far as, like, because I've never made a game before or launched a game or anything like that, so as far as my first ever making of a game and then releasing it, I think it's done pretty well. Like, yeah, I think one of the things that I'm currently getting a fair amount of criticism for is so in the game, the pathing is based on the deaths, because obviously quantum suicide. So when someone dies, it changes, which version of reality you go down. And depending on that, like through the multiple stages is kind of where you end up at the end. So the kind of romance options are determined based on who dies, not on points or flagging. And that hasn't gone down well. So sorry guys, anyone who's upset about that, my bad. But lessons learned for future. If I'm having romance elements, even if it is informed by scientific theory, it needs to follow the traditional flagging or point system to make people happy. So
gotta make them gamers happy. That's the main goal.
Yep. Well, I'm not here to annoy anyone, so hopefully, obviously you can't make everyone happy, but I'm not setting out to purposely annoy people, so my bad.
You're not Matt. That's Matt's specialty.
That's my job. Yeah, that's what I like to do. It's my hobby. But yeah, it is interesting, the visual novel community for what is a very niche community, I guess, and still is. I mean, visual novels are growing in popularity, and there's so many of them, but they are still a very kind of niche audience. It is interesting to me just how traditional they can be in terms of what they want from their visual novels, and yeah, it seems to be one of those genres where too much experimentation too much experimentation gets you in trouble with VNs for some reason, and yeah, I would imagine that your game might be pushing up against the edge of what a lot of people's tolerances might be for experimentation in VNs.
See, I think if I didn't have the romance element, it wouldn't be a problem. I think it would be a completely different story. They'd be like, oh yeah, but because you have like endings where you do end up with people, yeah. But as I said, lesson learned.
So what was the purpose of having the romance elements in a death game, other than to make sure you get that really cool booth at TGS in the romance section?
So the reason I decided to go down that route was because, like, obviously I like Danganronpa, but I don't know, I never feel particularly strongly about any of the characters, and I was like,
oh dear, that's going to be controversial with me. I'm sorry, but Kirigiri, like, you don't feel strongly about Kirigiri?
Look, I'm just like, all right, who's next? Like, so like, I don't know, maybe I'm just very like heartless. I don't know, but I was like, if I put a bit of a romance element in it, maybe it'll make people like people more, so that way when I kill them, they'll be more sad. So I was just pretty much trying to make people like characters that I could then murder. And I thought, if you really like that character, you'd try hard to keep them alive. So I kind of pushed the romance a bit, and that way, telling people that if you play your cards right, by the end of the game, you'll be alive, and the person you like will be alive, and you can see where it goes from there. So yeah, like it's not a very good reason, I guess.
It's good enough reason, I think.
Well, I think it makes a lot of sense.
I just thought, yeah, people might care more if they're a bit more invested.
Because, see, the thing with me, with the way I played it, it was kind of like it was a process of elimination. It was like the ones I didn't want to end up with the most went first.
Yep.
And I kind of
really surprised me. So, sorry to cut you off, but I assume you've played Lodgership, obviously, because I know you've gotten through to bidding wars at least. Mm-hmm. People got upset that they were trying to kill Melody and it wasn't showing up in the results.
Melody being the child.
Yeah,
character.
Melody being like a 5-year-old child, and they're trying to kill her, and I was like, all right, you monsters, calm down. So I made, obviously, new screens and stuff to show that they had tried to kill Melody, but we're not successful because I'm not letting you murder a 5-year-old. But I just couldn't, I didn't even think of it. It didn't even pass my mind that people were going to try and murder the 5-year-old. But apparently more than one person. So in the bug reports, because I have like a forum on Steam, and I'm like, just tell me what's wrong and I'll fix it as fast as possible, which has been really helpful because people have been super nice about it. Yeah, people are just like, I tried to kill Melody and it didn't even register, and I'm like, holy crap. Like, oh my god. But yeah, um, people, I thought I was bad. I'm not trying to kill children.
Do you get to see the kinds of the overarching, here's how many people made this decision, and does it surprise you, or has it been more along the lines of what you thought would happen?
Oh, you're talking about analytics?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, as in like how many people have played it and stuff?
Not just that, but how many people chose one decision over the other? You know, like in Telltale, they'll tell you 70% chose to save this person or whatever.
Yeah, I do not have any of that stuff in. Once I finish the Unity build, that'll be much easier to have incorporated, but Ren'Py is a little less complicated as an engine. So yeah, I don't even know if I have that option with Ren'Py.
It would be good to know how many people tried to kill Melody.
It
Just to know roughly the population of the population out there that are absolute psychopaths. It would be helpful to have that idea, that knowledge.
Yeah, like look, some of them made pretty good. Like they're just like, what? She's 5. She's useless. Like she brings nothing to the team. I'm like, well, okay. Like some of them were really ready to back themselves up, and I'm like, look, I'm not here to judge. I'm judging, but no, that like I know, like obviously I can see things like the rough like medium time played and stuff like that, which I'm quite happy with, which is currently sitting at 5.5 hours, which I think is pretty good. Like you need way more than that if you want to finish the game, but but I don't expect everyone to finish it, so
yeah, it's amazing, like the work I've done with game development and stuff, the number of people that end up buying the game and then not even, on console or whatever, not even unlocking the first trophy, which you literally get by, finishing the tutorial or something. There are a lot of people that don't actually play games, which tends to pull that average time played down. But yeah, 5.5 hours for your game seems like a good average. It means that a lot of people are really engaging with it, which is good.
Yeah, that made me pretty happy. I was like, that's a nice number.
And obviously the game's coming to other platforms, which is great. Looking forward to playing it on console where it belongs, to be honest. PC gaming's not my thing, so I made an exception for your game, but I don't generally do that. In terms of, the process is, have you enjoyed working on bringing it to console? Are you looking forward to perhaps finding a new audience with it? Because I think that, in all seriousness, I think the visual novels would sit better on console anyway.
I would like to think that there's an audience. Well, because I am not a real game developer or a programmer or anything, it's probably slightly harder for me than normal people because this is the first time I'm using Unity, and so I'm just trying to work it out on the fly. Yeah, look, I hope it works, considering how much effort this requires. So I hope at least one person will buy it and be like, I like this game. But yeah, obviously I wanted to go into the Vita because a lot of people ask for it on the Vita, and so far we're on track, but Vita closes pretty shortly, and I am working my butt off to get this across the line before they stop accepting Vita games. But I am only one person with 2 hands and no programming education, so
that Vita community, they're a fascinating audience. They are.
Yes. No, I don't want to let them down.
They're passionate. They're very passionate
Yes.
people.
Yeah.
They are. Vita,
Oh, they should
Vita
have just
fans.
all moved to the Switch. Come on.
Switch is where visual novels belong.
We've been talking about this before. There should be like a dedicated Kindle for visual novels
Yeah,
where you
there
just
should be a giant
it's
device.
the
just
only thing you play on them is VNs.
Yeah, and it's got a link to that it could be like the itch console because every visual novel on the planet ends up on itch, and yeah,
I'm
you just
working
have
on it.
300,000 different visuals to choose between.
Yeah, we hit a thing with itch because the game's too big.
Yes, they do have that. They have that 1 gigabyte maximum size requirement. Yeah.
Quantum Suicide's like 4 gig, and then people are like, "How is a visual novel 4 gig?" And I'm like, "You cut 20,000 plus VA lines. You'll find out how you get to 4 gig."
Yeah, it's called sound files. They do count. They do add up. Yeah, it's amazing that people. I always love to listen to people's opinions on how video games are made and what they do because people have opinions and they're all convinced they're experts. I have one other question for you. I guess if in terms of Quantum Suicide, you've got the death scenes. They're all pretty gory or dramatic, at least. I did not like burning up. That was horrible. Just the mental image of the. But anyway, it haunted me. The death scenes are great. You've got the romance options, and then you've got some fan service in there as well. Was that? Sorry.
The trifecta.
Yeah, the trifecta. Some of those scenes are quite. No, I don't want to say explicit because in video games explicit means something else entirely. But they're quite, boundary pushing. I want to say. Let's go with that, boundary pushing. Was it difficult to? I mean, did you have a sense when you were creating all of these visual key arts and stuff that there was a specific line that you didn't want to cross with, either the violence, the death scenes, or the fan service, and how did you manage that while still having that kind of edgy look and kind of drama that you're looking for with those scenes?
So as far as the death scenes and stuff go, I'm a pretty horrible person, so there was no real line there that I was.
Not horrible enough to give us the melody deaths. We did want those.
No. However, it's probably a good thing because PlayStation specifically has a problem with violence against children, and if I had that, I would not be accepted on the platform. So I've already had to show Sony every situation of a CG that Melody is in that is violent. So like if people are dead around her or she's dead or anything like that, and then kind of been like, she didn't suffer or or things like that. So yeah, it's a good thing I didn't go too far with children's murder. As far as the adulty content goes, I pretty much was like, if I can show my mum and be like, Mum, this is what I made, and I'm not embarrassed, that's a good indication. That being said, though, my mum is rather liberal.
I was going to say your mum must be pretty open-minded then, given some of those scenes, because
yeah,
they're pretty cool. They're pretty good.
But yeah, so obviously there's no like full-blown nudity. Like you have some bath scenes and stuff, but I mean, you don't see anything. Like it's still in your imagination. I actually got criticized because all the dudes are too ripped and it's unrealistic.
Oh, so yours is like the reverse of the Last of Us 2 issue where the Abby was too ripped. In your one, it's the guys are too ripped. I see.
They're like, how are all these men so ripped? And I'm like, what? What? It's hard work living on a spaceship.
Yeah, space will work out.
Yeah, they also, they have set rations, which means they can't overindulge. Like, I can make this work. Like all the women have bloody flat stomachs and stuff. What do you got a problem
with? There's not much water on there, so the density is not the same. So it shows up the muscles better. Yeah, it's all in the science.
Yeah, exactly. Like we can explain it. But no, yeah. So that's pretty much it. Like, don't kill children. Well, directly. She still dies sometimes, but not not directly. And if I can show my mum, it's okay. So yeah,
These
like
are
people got pretty upset about like I made Dakimakuras, and they're just like they're not naked, and I'm like no, they're sexy, not naked, and they're just like oh. And then one of them, so I have one for like all of the main characters, and then because I and Di are technically the same person, but technically not the same person, I have one for each. And so to differentiate, I has her bottom skirt on and just kind of lifted a little, where Di doesn't have the bottom skirt on. Rather, she's just in her underwear with like the top. And I had people get really upset that Di shows her underwear and no one else does. And they're like, this is favoritism. I want Shizuka's underwear. And I'm like, my God, okay.
so
Bear with me then.
we're all getting a fascinating crash course into the mindsets of fan communities here, and they're an interesting breed of people. Is the point?
Yeah, look, I absolutely love my community. To give you an idea about how delightful they are, so the Steam reviews are like the ones that you see on the main page are only based on bought games. So all of my Steam keys that have been handed out through Kickstarter don't count towards the review at the top of the page. So when it goes mixed, mostly positive or whatever, doesn't count. They don't count it. And I and at least one of my backers have worked that out and went and bought another copy through Steam themselves, so their review counted to counter some of the negative ones.
Oh, that's nice.
Oh, that's
There you
really
go.
So,
nice
right?
of
I'm
them.
just
Really
like,
nice.
my God, how are you all so sweet?
Oh, that's good to hear. I mean, you've had such a odyssey in actually getting this game made, and it's been one that I've been following for a long time, and obviously you've had all those issues and getting it over the line. So it's good that people appreciate that, and I wish you all the best with it. I hope it's a success for you. And
I've said to her, I'd like to actually do game development as a real job rather than on the side of full-time study and part-time jobs. So
yeah, living the dream. Hopefully, I hope you get there. I think it's a really great game. Anybody listening to this podcast, I really do genuinely recommend it. I think it's if you enjoyed Virtue's Last Reward or Danganronpa, if you like death games, if you like thinky visual novels that will get you creative, and if you like games that apparently respect children enough not to kill them, then
but we'll allow you to try.
but we'll allow you to try. They give
But
you
may judge you if you do.
they give you all the opportunities you need. But in all seriousness, go and check it out. It's a great game. A lot of work has gone into it, and it deserves success. So I want to thank you for being on the podcast, Tina. It's been really great to have you on, and we will give it a wrap here. Is there any music for Quantum Suicide around?
Yeah, the main theme song is pretty good. It's actually a Sevio song, like, so it's kind of like Hatsune Miku, but not.
Cool. Is that on the YouTubes or something? Is there somewhere we can find it so we can add it to our podcast?
I can just send you a copy.
Oh, if you can do that, that'd be great. We would use that as our concluding music for the podcast today. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in, and have a great month with the video games, and we will be back in a couple of weeks with another podcast.
Woohoo!
私たちはバグ整合性を失いバランスを崩す突然一瞬溶け込まない